Bonjour, Madame Dubois, I purred, channeling my best French accent. This is Daniel Carter. I'm calling about the Blackwood wedding gown. Yes, the one with the chantilly lace and the diamond embellishments. I'd like to arrange for its immediate collection. No alterations needed. I've decided to donate it to a worthy cause. There's a charity that provides wedding dresses to underprivileged brides. I'm sure they'll find someone who will appreciate it far more than my dear sister. The invoice glared back at me from the laptop screen, a mocking testament to my folly. $12,000 for floral arrangements, I muttered, my voice laced with disbelief. Who needs a small forest of orchids just to say, I do? Olivia, of course. My dear, sweet, utterly spoiled little sister, for whom no expense was too extravagant, no demand too unreasonable. The wedding, a mere 3 months away, was shaping up to be a financial black hole, sucking in my hard-earned savings with the efficiency of a Dyson vacuum cleaner. A wave of resentment washed over me, a bitter taste coating my tongue. It had always been this way. Olivia, the golden child, the princess who never had to lift a finger, while I, the responsible older brother, picked up the pieces, shouldered the burdens, and footed the bills. I closed my eyes, the memories swirling like a bitter cocktail. Olivia throwing a tantrum in the toy store because she couldn't have the latest designer doll, while I quietly put back the book I'd been saving up for. Olivia demanding a sweet 16 party that rivaled a Kardashian extravaganza while I worked overtime to cover the costs. Olivia dropping out of college after a single semester, declaring it too boring, while I juggled a full-time job and night classes to earn my degree. And now, the wedding. The ultimate princess fantasy, complete with a fairy tale castle, a designer dress that cost more than my car, and a guest list that could fill a small stadium. All paid for, naturally, by yours truly. The phone rang, shattering the silence of my home office. Olivia's name flashed across the screen, a Pavlovian trigger for a surge of resentment. Danny? She chirped, her voice dripping with a saccharine sweetness that always set my teeth on edge. I need to talk to you about the wedding. What is it now, Olivia? I sighed, rubbing my temples, already anticipating another unreasonable demand. The cake, she announced, her voice laced with a petulant whine. The baker called. They can't get the imported strawberries I wanted. Apparently there's been a strawberry shortage. A strawberry shortage? I echoed, my voice laced with incredulity. Olivia, it's a cake. It's not going to make or break the wedding. But I wanted those strawberries, she wailed. They're the perfect shade of pink. It's not fair. Fair? I scoffed, my patience wearing thin. Olivia, you've spent the last 6 months demanding the most extravagant, the most expensive, the most ridiculous things for this wedding. And you're complaining about a strawberry shortage? But it's my special day, she protested, her voice rising with indignation. I deserve to have everything perfect. You deserve a reality check, I muttered under my breath, before forcing a calmer tone. Olivia, I'm doing the best I can, but there are limits, financial limits, and frankly, patience limits. But Danny… No buts, Olivia, I interrupted, my voice firm. The cake will be fine, the wedding will be fine, and if you can't appreciate that, then maybe you need to rethink what's truly important. I hung up the phone, the dial tone a welcome relief from her incessant whining. The invoice on the screen mocked me with its exorbitant figures, a constant reminder of the financial burden I had willingly shouldered. But beneath the resentment, a new resolve began to take shape. This wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about control, about boundaries, about finally putting an end to Olivia's reign of entitlement. The princess was about to learn a harsh lesson about the real world, a world where strawberries weren't always the perfect shade of pink, and where special days didn't come with a blank check. Another Olivia-induced meltdown? Hannah asked, her voice laced with a gentle amusement as I walked through the door, my shoulders slumped with the weight of the day's frustrations. I collapsed onto the sofa beside her, burying my face in the crook of her neck. Strawberry Gate 2024, I mumbled, the scent of her lavender perfume a soothing balm to my frayed nerves. Apparently the imported variety she demanded for her cake is unavailable. The world is ending, I tell you. Hannah chuckled, her hand stroking my hair with a comforting rhythm. Your sister has a unique talent for finding drama in the most mundane of situations. It's not just the strawberries, I sighed, pulling away to meet her gaze. It's everything. The endless demands, the constant complaints, the complete lack of appreciation for everything I'm doing for her. Hannah's smile faded, her eyes reflecting a concern that mirrored my own. She's been difficult, I know, but she's your sister, Daniel, and she's going through a lot right now. Going through a lot? I scoffed, my voice rising with indignation. She's planning a wedding that would bankrupt a small country, and she's throwing a tantrum over a berry. Meanwhile, I'm working myself to the bone to pay for her princess fantasy, and she can't even be bothered to say thank you. Hannah's hand tightened on mine, her touch a silent plea for understanding. I know it's frustrating, sweetheart, but she's family, and family is important. More important than my sanity? I grumbled, though the fight was already draining out of me. Hannah had a way of doing that, of calming the storm within me with her quiet strength and unwavering empathy. She'll come around, Hannah said, her voice filled with a conviction I didn't quite share. She just needs time to realize how lucky she is to have you. I looked at her, my heart swelling with a love that eclipsed even the frustration I felt towards my sister. Hannah, with her endless patience, her unwavering support, her ability to see the good in everyone, even Olivia. She was the anchor that kept me grounded, the light that guided me through the darkness. You're too good for this world, I murmured, pulling her close, seeking solace in her warmth. And you're too good for your sister, she replied, her voice laced with a gentle teasing. But you love her, and that's what matters. I sighed, the weight of obligation settling back on my shoulders. Hannah was right, as always. Family was important, even when they drove you crazy. And Olivia, despite her flaws, her entitlement, her infuriating behavior, was still my sister. Fine, I conceded, a reluctant smile tugging at the corners of my lips. I'll keep playing the role of the benevolent older brother. But if she asks for a solid gold cake topper encrusted with diamonds, I'm drawing the line? Hannah laughed, the sound a melody that chased away the last vestiges of my frustration. I'm sure you'll figure it out, she said, her eyes sparkling with a love that made everything seem a little less daunting. I held her close, savoring the moment, the quiet comfort of her presence. She was right. I would figure it out, I always did. But as I drifted off to sleep that night, a nagging doubt lingered at the back of my mind. How much longer could I keep playing this role? How much more could I tolerate before the resentment, the frustration, the sheer injustice of it all finally boiled over? Sunday brunch at Aunt Mildred's was a tradition, a ritualistic gathering of the Carter clan that usually involved lukewarm coffee, overcooked quiche, and a healthy dose of passive-aggressive commentary from various relatives. This particular Sunday, however, was shaping up to be a spectacularly disastrous affair. Olivia, resplendent in a designer dress that probably cost more than my last paycheck, held court at the head of the table, regaling everyone with tales of her upcoming nuptials. Her fiancé, Mark, a hapless fellow with a perpetually bewildered expression, sat beside her, nodding dutifully at her every pronouncement. "And the flowers, darling," Olivia gushed, her voice dripping with a self-satisfied sweetness, "are going to be flown in from Holland. The florist assured me they're the rarest, most exquisite tulips you've ever seen." Aunt Mildred, never one to be outdone in the extravagance department, gasped dramatically. "Oh, my dear, how marvelous! They'll simply make the wedding." Hannah, bless her patient soul, offered a polite smile. "They sound lovely, Olivia." Olivia, however, seemed determined to push every button. She turned to Hannah, her eyes narrowed with a disdain she didn't even bother to conceal. "Well, of course you wouldn't know anything about exquisite flowers. Would you, Hannah? Not coming from your background." The air thickened with a palpable tension. Hannah's smile faltered, her cheeks flushing with a delicate pink that mirrored the insult. I felt a surge of anger, a primal urge to defend my wife, to put Olivia in her place. But before I could speak, Olivia continued, her voice dripping with venom. "You're lucky Daniel settled for you, darling. You'll never really be one of us." The words, sharp and cruel, hung in the air, shattering the fragile facade of family harmony. Hannah's face crumpled, her eyes welling up with tears. I watched, my blood boiling as she excused herself, fleeing the room with a quiet dignity that only amplified Olivia's vulgarity. That was it. The final straw. The years of tolerance, the endless sacrifices, the constant enabling, it all culminated in this moment, this blatant display of disrespect, this cruel attack on the one person who had always been there for me, who had loved me unconditionally, who had never asked for anything in return. I stood up, my chair scraping against the floor, the sound a jarring interruption to Olivia's self-absorbed monologue. "Olivia," I said, my voice low and dangerous, "you've crossed a line." She stared at me, her eyes wide with a mixture of surprise and defiance. "Oh, please, Danny," she scoffed. "Don't be so dramatic, it was just a joke." "A joke?" I echoed, my voice rising with anger. "You humiliated my wife, insulted her family, and questioned her place in this family. And you call that a joke?" "She's too sensitive," Olivia retorted, her voice laced with a petulant whine. "She needs to toughen up." "No, Olivia," I said, my voice shaking with suppressed fury. "You need to grow up. You need to learn some respect, some humility, some basic human decency. And until you do, you can forget about this wedding, this princess fantasy you've constructed at my expense." I turned and walked out, following Hannah's retreating figure. The family, stunned into silence, watched me go, their faces a mixture of shock and apprehension. But I didn't care. Olivia had pushed me too far, her selfishness finally eclipsing my tolerance. The princess was about to fall from her ivory tower, and I, the long-suffering brother, was about to deliver the final blow. The image of Hannah's tear-stained face, the hurt in her eyes, fueled my resolve. Olivia had crossed a line I had drawn in the sand years ago, a line she had repeatedly trampled over with her careless disregard for anyone but herself. It was time for payback. Time for the princess to learn that actions have consequences, and that entitlement doesn't buy you a free pass in the real world. The laptop, still open on the kitchen table, displayed the offending invoice, its exorbitant figures now a source of grim satisfaction. I pulled out my phone, a wicked grin spreading across my face. Time to make some calls. "Hello, Chateau de Luxe? Yes, this is Daniel Carter. I'm calling to cancel the booking for the Blackwood Carter wedding." "That's right, the entire event." "No, there won't be a reschedule." "And yes, I am aware of the cancellation fee. Consider it a donation to the cause of teaching my sister a lesson in humility." The stunned silence on the other end of the line was a sweet symphony to my ears. I moved on to the next target, my voice gaining confidence with each call. "Floral Fantasies? Cancel the order for the Blackwood Carter wedding. Yes, the entire order. No, I don't care if the orchids have already been flown in from the Himalayas. Perhaps you can donate them to a local retirement home. I'm sure they'd appreciate a touch of exotic beauty. Gourmet galore? Cancel the catering contract. Yes, the whole shebang. No, I'm not interested in a partial refund. Consider it a small price to pay for the entertainment value of watching my sister's meltdown." With each cancellation, a wave of exhilaration washed over me. This was more than just financial revenge. This was about reclaiming my power, about asserting my boundaries, about finally standing up to the tyranny of Olivia's entitlement. But the pièce de résistance, the final blow, was yet to come. The wedding dress. That ridiculously expensive, custom-made monstrosity that Olivia had insisted on, despite my protests, despite the fact that it cost more than my first car. Oh, I had plans for that dress. "Bonjour, Madame Dubois," I purred, channeling my best French accent. "This is Daniel Carter. I'm calling about the Blackwood wedding gown. Yes, the one with the chantilly lace and the diamond embellishments. I'd like to arrange for its immediate collection. No, no alterations needed. I've decided to donate it to a worthy cause. There's a charity that provides wedding dresses to underprivileged brides. I'm sure they'll find someone who will appreciate it far more than my dear sister. The gasp of astonishment on the other end of the line was music to my ears. Nice joke, Daniel. You almost had me there. I'll prepare the dress for the collection, she replied. I hung up the phone, a triumphant grin spreading across my face. The princess was about to lose her glass slipper, and I, the wicked stepbrother, was about to have the last laugh. The plan was in motion, a carefully orchestrated symphony of chaos and payback. I could almost picture Olivia's reaction, the meltdown, the tantrums, the desperate scramble to salvage her perfect day. A delicious anticipation filled me, a sense of righteous satisfaction that outweighed any guilt or remorse. Olivia had played the princess for far too long. It was time for her reign to end. Mr. Carter, such a pleasure to see you again, Madame Dubois gushed, her heavily perfumed greeting wafting towards me like a cloud of expensive floral air freshener. Here to check on the progress of the masterpiece? Indeed, Madame Dubois, I replied, my voice smooth as silk, a hint of steel beneath the surface. I've decided to take the dress for some last-minute alterations. Her eyebrows arched in surprise. Alterations? But the final fitting was just last week. Everything was perfect. A discerning gentleman like myself always strives for perfection, Madame Dubois, I said, my smile widening. A few minor adjustments, nothing major, just a little nip and tuck here and there. She fluttered her hands nervously. But the wedding is just weeks away. Are you sure there's enough time? Time, my dear Madame Dubois, is a luxury I can afford, I said, my voice laced with a subtle reminder of who was footing the bill for this extravaganza. Rest assured, the dress will be back in your capable hands well before the big day. With a flourish, I signed the release form, the crisp paper crackling with the promise of sweet revenge. As I hoisted the garment bag onto my shoulder, its weight surprisingly substantial, I couldn't resist a parting shot. You have exquisite taste, Madame Dubois, I said, my eyes twinkling with amusement. A shame my sister doesn't share your appreciation for fine craftsmanship. Her face fell, a flicker of unease replacing her professional smile. I turned and walked out, the dress in tow, leaving behind the faint scent of expensive perfume and a lingering sense of anticipation. The charity shop, a world away from the opulent bridal boutique, was a haven of humble aspirations and second-hand dreams. The volunteer, a kindly woman with a warm smile, accepted the dress with a gasp of delight. "This is incredible," she exclaimed, her eyes wide with wonder. "It's absolutely stunning. Some lucky bride is going to be so happy." "Indeed," I replied, my voice laced with a satisfaction that ran deeper than mere generosity. "I'm sure you'll find someone who will appreciate it." As I walked away, the image of Olivia's face when she discovered the missing dress fueled my steps. The meltdown, the tantrums, the accusations. It would be a symphony of entitlement and outrage, a performance worthy of an Oscar. And I, the orchestrator of this delicious chaos, would be watching from the sidelines, a smug grin plastered on my face. Olivia, the princess, who had always taken everything for granted, was about to learn a harsh lesson about the value of things, the importance of gratitude, and the consequences of her actions. The dress, a symbol of her extravagant desires, was now a symbol of her downfall, a tangible reminder that the world didn't revolve around her, and that her special day wasn't worth bankrupting her brother and alienating her family. The irony was delicious, the satisfaction immense. The princess was about to lose her crown, and I, the long-suffering brother, was finally taking back the reins. The phone call came just as I was settling in for a quiet evening with Hannah, a bottle of wine and a takeout menu promising a much-needed escape from the day's stresses. Olivia's voice, usually a symphony of sugary sweetness, was now a screeching crescendo of outrage and disbelief. "Daniel, what have you done?" she shrieked, her words tumbling over each other in a torrent of accusations. The dress, the venue, the caterers, everything's gone. You've ruined my wedding. I leaned back in my chair, a smug grin spreading across my face. Ruined your wedding? Olivia, darling, you've been ruining your own wedding for months with your endless demands and your complete disregard for anyone but yourself. But the dress, she wailed, her voice cracking with a hysteria that bordered on comical. It's gone. Madame Dubois said you took it. What have you done with it? I donated it, I replied calmly, enjoying the stunned silence that followed. Figured someone more deserving should have it. Someone who appreciates the value of things, someone who understands the meaning of gratitude. You, she sputtered, her voice choked with rage. You're insane. You're jealous. You've always been jealous of me. Jealous? I scoffed, my amusement growing with each passing moment. Olivia, you're living in a fantasy world. A world where you're the princess, and everyone else is just a supporting character in your self-absorbed drama. Well, guess what? The curtain's closing, darling. Time for a reality check. I'll sue you, she threatened, her voice regaining some of its usual venom. I'll take you for everything you've got. Be my guest, I said, my voice laced with a challenge. But before you do, I suggest you take a long, hard look in the mirror. Ask yourself who's really to blame for this mess. Ask yourself why your own family is turning against you. Ask yourself why your fiancé is starting to have second thoughts. The silence on the other end of the line was deafening, a testament to the impact of my words. Olivia, for the first time in her life, was facing the consequences of her actions, the bitter reality of a world that didn't revolve around her. You'll regret this, Daniel, she hissed, her voice a venomous whisper. You'll regret this for the rest of your life. Perhaps, I replied, my voice laced with a quiet confidence. But I'd rather regret standing up to you than regret enabling your selfishness for another day. The princess has fallen, Olivia, and it's time for you to learn how to stand on your own 2 feet. I hung up the phone, a wave of satisfaction washing over me. Olivia's meltdown was a symphony of outrage and despair, a performance worthy of an encore. But beneath the amusement, a flicker of pity lingered. She was my sister, after all, and her downfall, though deserved, was still a source of sadness. But I had made my decision, drawn a line in the sand. The princess had to fall. It was the only way for her to learn, to grow, to maybe, just maybe, become the person she was meant to be. The family grapevine, as always, was abuzz. News of Olivia's meltdown and my retaliatory strike spread like wildfire, sparking a flurry of phone calls and hushed conversations. Initially, the reactions were a mix of shock and disapproval. Daniel, have you lost your mind? Aunt Mildred shrieked, her voice laced with a melodramatic horror. Canceling the wedding? Donating the dress? What will people say? They'll say that Olivia finally got what she deserved, I replied calmly, unfazed by her theatrics. But families should stick together, she protested, her voice cracking with indignation. Families shouldn't tolerate abuse, I countered, my voice hardening. Olivia has been taking advantage of me, disrespecting Hannah, and generally behaving like a spoiled brat for far too long. It's time for her to face the consequences of her actions. To my surprise, a chorus of agreement followed. Uncle George, usually a man of few words, grunted his approval. Good for you, son. Someone had to put that girl in her place. Even my cousins, usually caught in the crossfire of Olivia's drama, chimed in with their own tales of her entitlement and her lack of appreciation. Remember that time she borrowed my car and returned it with an empty gas tank and a parking ticket? Sarah grumbled. And that time she forgot to pay me back for those concert tickets? Michael added. The revelations, though not surprising, solidified my resolve. I wasn't alone in my frustration, my resentment, my exhaustion with Olivia's behavior. The family, tired of her antics, was finally ready to hold her accountable. The most significant shift, however, came from Mark. Olivia's fiancé, once blinded by her beauty and her charm, was now starting to see the cracks in her carefully constructed facade. "Olivia, I need to talk to you," he said, his voice unusually firm. "About, well, about everything." "Oh, Mark, darling," she cooed, attempting to deflect the conversation with her usual charm. "Don't worry about all that nonsense. It's just a little family drama. Everything will be fine." But Mark wasn't buying it. "No, Olivia," he insisted. "It's not fine. Your behavior, it's been, well, it's been unacceptable. The way you treat your brother, your family, even me, it's not okay." Olivia's eyes widened with a mixture of surprise and indignation. "But Mark, No buts, Olivia," he interrupted, his voice gaining confidence. "I'm starting to wonder if I even know you. The woman I fell in love with? She was kind. She was generous. Well, she wasn't like this." Olivia's carefully constructed composure crumbled, her eyes welling up with tears. "But I love you, Mark," she pleaded, her voice cracking with desperation. "I don't want to lose you." "Then you need to change, Olivia," he said, his voice softening with a hint of sadness. "You need to take a long, hard look at yourself and decide what kind of person you want to be. Because the Olivia I'm seeing now, she's not the woman I want to marry." He turned and walked away, leaving Olivia standing alone, her tears tracing a path through her carefully applied makeup. The princess, stripped of her crown, her fiancé, and her family's support, was finally facing the consequences of her actions. And I, the brother who had always been there to pick up the pieces, was finally letting go. The chaos of the past few days had left me feeling drained, but a nagging sense of unease wouldn't allow me to fully relax. While sorting through some old paperwork in my parents' attic, a task I'd been putting off for months, I stumbled upon a box filled with financial documents, dusty ledgers, and faded photographs. Curiosity piqued, I began to sift through the papers. It was a morbid fascination, a glimpse into a past I barely remembered, a time before Olivia's entitlement had completely overshadowed our family dynamics. As I delved deeper, however, a disturbing pattern began to emerge. There were discrepancies in the estate records, irregularities in the withdrawals, unexplained transfers of funds. Small amounts at first, then larger and larger sums, disappearing like mist in the morning sun, and the trail always led to Olivia. My blood ran cold. Olivia, the spoiled princess, the perpetual victim, had been systematically siphoning off funds from our parents' estate for years. The realization hit me like a physical blow, the anger rising within me in a suffocating wave. How could she? How could she betray us like this, exploit our parents' trust, our family's legacy, for her own selfish desires? A wave of nausea washed over me as I imagined the years of deception. The elaborate lies she must have concocted to cover her tracks. The anger, simmering beneath the surface for years, now erupted, a volcano of fury threatening to consume me. I had to confront her. Now. Olivia was still holed up in her apartment, a prisoner of her own making. I found her curled up on the sofa, a tear-stained face buried in a pile of discarded tissues. "Olivia," I said, my voice low and dangerous, "we need to talk." She looked up, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and defiance. "What is it, Daniel? Are you here to gloat?" "Gloat?" I scoffed, my anger rising. "I'm not here for gloating, Olivia. I'm here to expose you." Her eyes narrowed. "Expose me? What are you talking about?" I pulled out the financial documents, the evidence of her deceit laid bare for all to see. "Look at this," I said, my voice shaking with a mixture of anger and disbelief. "These are our parents' accounts, and it seems you've been helping yourself to a healthy slice of their inheritance for quite some time." Olivia, her face pale and drawn, stammered out a weak denial, her eyes darting around the room. I don't know what you're talking about. This must be a mistake." "A mistake?" I echoed, my voice dripping with sarcasm. "A string of mistakes that have been going on for years? Olivia, you're a thief." The word hung heavy in the air, a damning indictment that shattered any remaining pretense of innocence. Olivia, cornered and exposed, finally crumbled, her carefully constructed facade crumbling like a house of cards. I needed the money, she whispered, her voice barely audible. I needed to keep up appearances, to maintain my lifestyle. You wouldn't understand. Understand? I scoffed. I understand the value of hard work, of honesty, of respecting the legacy of the people we love. You, on the other hand, seem to have forgotten all of that. The anger, fueled by years of resentment and the betrayal of her own sister, burned within me. Olivia had not only squandered her inheritance, she had betrayed the trust of our parents, tarnished their memory, and shattered the fragile bonds of family. The princess, it seemed, was not only fallen, she was utterly and irrevocably broken. The living room of Aunt Mildred's house, usually a space of forced pleasantries and passive-aggressive jabs, crackled with a tension thicker than the Christmas fruitcake she insisted on serving year-round. The family assembled at my behest, shifted uncomfortably in their seats, their faces etched with a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. Olivia, pale and trembling, sat huddled on the sofa, her eyes darting nervously around the room. "I've called you all here today," I began, my voice steady despite the turmoil within me, "because there's something you need to know." I laid out the financial documents on the coffee table, the evidence of Olivia's deceit stark against the floral tablecloth. A collective gasp filled the room, followed by a stunned silence. "What is this, Daniel?" Uncle George asked, his voice laced with disbelief. "It's proof," I said, my voice hardening, "that Olivia has been stealing from our parents' estate for years." The room erupted in a cacophony of accusations, denials, and shocked exclamations. Olivia, cornered and exposed, tried to defend herself, but her words were met with a wave of anger and disgust. I didn't have a choice," she stammered, her eyes welling up with tears. "I needed the money." "Needed it for what?" Aunt Sarah scoffed, her voice dripping with disdain. "For another designer handbag? For another spa day? For another one of your ridiculous whims?" "You've been living a lie, Olivia," Uncle Michael added, his voice shaking with disappointment. "You've been taking advantage of us, of our trust, of our parents' memory." "It's not fair," Olivia wailed, her voice cracking with desperation. "Daniel has always had everything. He got the good grades, the good job, the perfect wife. I deserve something too." "You deserve a reality check," I said, my voice cutting through her self-pitying tirade. "You've been handed everything on a silver platter, Olivia. You've never had to work for anything, never had to face the consequences of your actions. And now you're blaming everyone but yourself for your own mistakes." The family, once sympathetic to Olivia's plight, now turned on her, their frustration and resentment boiling over. Accusations flew like daggers, long-held grievances bubbling to the surface. The room became a battleground of words, a cathartic release of years of suppressed emotions. I watched the scene unfold, a strange mix of satisfaction and sadness swirling within me. Olivia's true colors had been exposed, her carefully constructed facade shattered. The family, finally united in their disapproval, was holding her accountable for her actions. But as I witnessed the bonds of kinship fraying, the love and trust that had once held us together dissolving into a bitter pool of anger and resentment, I couldn't help but mourn the loss of the family we once were. Olivia, the princess who had always demanded the spotlight, was now alone, isolated, the target of their collective scorn. Her tears, once a weapon to manipulate and control, now flowed freely, a testament to her despair. But even in her downfall, I saw a glimmer of hope, a flicker of understanding in her eyes. Perhaps, just perhaps, this was the wake-up call she needed, the catalyst for a change that would lead her back to us, back to the family she had so carelessly taken for granted. The news of Olivia's financial misdeeds reached Mark with the swiftness of a viper strike, poisoning the well of their relationship with a toxic dose of doubt and disillusionment. He confronted her, his voice trembling with a mixture of hurt and anger, his eyes mirroring the storm raging within his heart. Olivia, how could you? He asked, his voice barely a whisper. How could you lie to me, to your family, to everyone? Olivia, her face pale and drawn, her carefully constructed composure shattered, could only offer a weak defense. I needed the money, Mark. I didn't have a choice. Didn't have a choice, he echoed, his voice rising with disbelief. You had a choice, Olivia. You chose to steal, to deceive, to betray the trust of the people who loved you most. But I love you, Mark, she pleaded, her eyes welling up with tears. I love you more than anything. Love, he scoffed, his voice laced with a bitterness that surprised even himself. Love doesn't involve lies and deceit, Olivia. Love doesn't involve stealing from your own family to fund your extravagant lifestyle. But I was going to pay it back, she insisted, her voice cracking with desperation. I just needed a little more time. Time? He repeated, his voice filled with a weary sadness. Time to do what, Olivia? To dig yourself deeper into this hole? To hurt more people? To destroy everything we had? Olivia, her world crumbling around her, lashed out, her words a desperate attempt to deflect the blame, to salvage some semblance of control. This is all Daniel's fault, she cried, her voice raw with anger. He's the one who exposed me, who turned everyone against me. He's jealous, Mark. He's always been jealous. But her accusations fell on deaf ears. Mark had seen enough. He had witnessed her selfishness, her entitlement, her complete disregard for anyone but herself. And he knew, with a certainty that chilled him to the bone, that this was not the woman he wanted to spend his life with. I'm sorry, Olivia, he said, his voice heavy with regret. But I can't do this anymore. I can't marry you. I can't trust you. I can't even love you anymore. Olivia's carefully constructed facade finally shattered, her tears flowing freely, her sobs echoing through the empty apartment. She had lost everything, her dream wedding, her fiancé, her family's respect, her own sense of self-worth. She was alone, abandoned, adrift in a sea of despair. As Mark walked away, his heart heavy with a mixture of sadness and relief, Olivia's world collapsed around her. The princess, stripped of her crown, her illusions, her carefully curated life, was left with nothing but the bitter taste of regret and the crushing weight of her own mistakes. The future, once a shimmering tapestry of dreams and aspirations, now loomed before her, a dark and uncertain abyss. The silence of the apartment was deafening, a stark contrast to the constant buzz of activity that had once filled its walls. Sunlight streamed through the windows, mocking the gloom that had settled over the once bright space. Dust motes danced in the golden rays, their silent ballet a testament to the neglect that had overtaken Olivia's once pristine sanctuary. She lay curled up on the sofa, her body a knot of despair, her mind a whirlwind of recriminations and regret. The phone, once her lifeline to the outside world, now lay silent, its screen dark and lifeless. The messages she had sent to Mark, a desperate plea for forgiveness, a last-ditch attempt to salvage their relationship, remained unanswered. Please, Mark, pick up, she whispered, her voice hoarse and trembling. I need to talk to you. I need you to understand. But the only response was the hollow echo of her own voice, a cruel reminder of the isolation that had enveloped her. She had pushed everyone away, her selfishness and entitlement creating a chasm between her and the people who had once cared about her. She tried to reach out to her friends, the ones who had always been there to laugh with her, to gossip with her, to share in her triumphs and commiserate in her failures. But their voices, once warm and welcoming, now held a distant chill. Oh, Olivia, it's so good to hear from you, Chloe said, her voice laced with a forced cheerfulness that Olivia could see through. But I'm swamped right now. Can I call you back next week? Next week? Olivia echoed, her voice cracking with disappointment. But I need to talk to you now. I know, sweetie, Chloe replied, her voice softening with a hint of pity. But I really can't right now. I've got a deadline looming. We'll catch up soon, I promise. But the promise rang hollow, a polite dismissal that left Olivia feeling more alone than ever. She tried another friend, then another, each conversation a variation on the same theme: excuses, apologies, and a thinly veiled reluctance to engage. "I'm so sorry, Olivia," Sarah said, her voice laced with a hesitant awkwardness. "But I'm not sure I can be friends with you anymore." The words, blunt and brutal, pierced through Olivia's carefully constructed defenses. She had been ostracized, cast out from the social circle that had once defined her world. Her friends, the ones who had always been there to validate her, to support her, to celebrate her, were now turning their backs on her, their loyalty eroded by her lies and her betrayal. The self-pity that had initially consumed her began to give way to a gnawing fear. She had built her life on a foundation of superficiality, her relationships defined by convenience and self-interest. She had taken her family for granted, exploited their love, and dismissed their concerns. She had chased the illusion of happiness, the fleeting satisfaction of material possessions and social status, while neglecting the true treasures of life: the bonds of kinship, the comfort of genuine connection, the enduring power of love and loyalty. Now, she was paying the price. The princess, stripped of her crown, her fiancé, and her friends, was left with nothing but the hollow echo of her own mistakes and the crushing weight of her isolation. The future, once a shimmering tapestry of dreams and aspirations, now loomed before her, a dark and uncertain abyss. The silence, once a crushing weight, began to morph into something else: a space for reflection, a mirror reflecting not the opulent furnishings of her apartment, but the stark landscape of her own soul. Olivia, stripped bare of the distractions that had once defined her life, was forced to confront the woman she had become. Days bled into each other, marked not by social engagements or shopping sprees, but by the slow, agonizing process of introspection. She revisited the memories, the choices, the patterns of behavior that had led her to this desolate place. The tantrums, the demands, the casual cruelty inflicted on those who dared to deny her desires. They played out in her mind, each scene a stark indictment of her selfishness, her entitlement, her utter lack of empathy. She saw the hurt in Hannah's eyes, the disappointment in her family's voices, the growing resentment in Daniel's gaze. She saw the way she had used Mark, his love a convenient prop in her self-absorbed drama. She saw the friends she had pushed away, their loyalty eroded by her constant demands and her inability to reciprocate their kindness. The realization was a bitter pill to swallow, a gut-wrenching acknowledgement of the damage she had caused, the opportunities she had squandered, the relationships she had fractured. The princess, once so sure of her own worth, her own entitlement to a life of privilege and adoration, now saw the emptiness beneath the surface, the hollowness of her pursuits, the shallowness of her connections. A deep-seated fear, a primal terror of being unloved, unworthy, abandoned. It rose within her, a suffocating wave that threatened to drown her in its icy grip. This was the root of it all, she realized. The driving force behind her relentless pursuit of validation, her insatiable hunger for attention, her desperate need to be the center of everyone's world. But the world, she now understood, did not revolve around her. It was a vast and complex ecosystem of interconnected lives, each one with its own struggles, its own triumphs, its own unique value. And she, Olivia Carter, was just one small part of this intricate tapestry, her worth determined not by the labels she wore or the possessions she accumulated, but by the quality of her character, the depth of her empathy, the genuineness of her connections. A glimmer of understanding dawned, a fragile spark in the darkness of her despair. She needed to change, to shed the skin of the entitled princess, to embrace the vulnerability of being truly seen, truly known, to take responsibility for her actions, to make amends for the hurt she had caused, to rebuild the bridges she had burned. It wouldn't be easy. The road ahead was long and arduous, filled with the potholes of past mistakes and the uphill climb of self-improvement. But for the first time in her life, Olivia felt a flicker of hope, a genuine desire to become a better person, a woman worthy of love, respect, and belonging. The awakening was painful, but it was also liberating. The princess was dead, and in her place, a new Olivia was emerging, a woman ready to face the consequences of her past and embrace the possibility of a future built on humility, empathy, and genuine connection.